to the People's History of Horror podcast review of the Salem's Lot movie on the HBO Max. We just got done watching it. And so, first impressions like good, bad, love it, hate it, middling.
Alright, so I enjoyed it. Granted, always take that with a grain of salt when I enjoy a movie. I enjoy most movies if the story is engaging at all. I will
You just enjoy the experience, so whatever it is, there's a specific level of kind of.
This is a story I love, so they did do it justice. I've heard the complaint that it feels a little rushed, and that's a complaint I made to you in the movie, but I also immediately backed it with it does, but it doesn't.
They rushed the first little bit, like what I guess would have amounted to like the first third of the book.
Yeah.
And then right about the middle, it started slowing down, and they kind of extended the end. We'll get to the extensions on the end and everything here in a minute. But the first thing I noticed is they didn't put in the prologue. They started right, so you didn't get the bit afterwards that was put at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
And one thing that I mentioned in my blog about that particular prologue is that some people think it's kind of spoilery because it's
it tells you immediately if everyone's died.
yeah, it tells you the town is dead now. It's like they compare it to Roanoke. Like, so all of that's gone from this movie, which is fine, but for the book, it really helped because it did cast just like a really bleak, ominous feeling across the whole story.
Absolutely.
You're kind of like, well, this person's...
Because as you're getting attached to characters, you're just like, wait, I know they're going to die. Fuck.
And so, in the book, or in this movie, if you don't have that knowledge of the book, it starts, like you said, it's rushed, but it kind of... We mentioned how we liked the opening little credits, with the little map and
that's the point I was going to make with saying it feels rushed. It does, but it doesn't in the details because, like the opening credits, if you pay attention and you're reading those little clippings and everything, you kind of get a little bit of the details that they cut out.
Definitely added some.
But there's other scenes such as that there's characters that have been cut to, things that happened with them that were the only substantial thing with them.
Yeah.
Swapped to another character so that they can cut it out. Yeah, it keeps them from making a 5-6 hour movie.
I mentioned that because, this is a Stephen King book, and Stephen King has
He likes to walk his around, spread his feet.
There's a little demon running around. But, little vampire cat. Yeah. But, I like here, the first thing I got on here is the visuals. And I commented on this several times. And it did pretty much follow through the whole movie of that red and blue doubling scale thing with the colors. Especially that one scene you said you really liked with the cotton candy sky.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah.
There's a double layered blue and red sky as Danny and Ralphie are walking around.
Yeah, it looked dope as fuck.
And I noticed that on like the poster on the HBO Max thing, it had the red-blue scheme. And what we talked about when we watched the trailer is that I noticed that, and it seemed because we mentioned how a lot of movies are too dark, and I brought up one of the last episodes of Game of Thrones. There was like some controversy because couldn't nobody see what the fuck was happening on the screen, so they had to go back and lighten it up. And I have a problem with a lot of different movies unless you're in the theater and all the lights are out. And even sometimes, even then, it's hard to tell what's going on the screen because it's so dark. And a lot of movies lean on that for the ominous feeling instead of just creating an ominous feeling. But then at the same time, we mentioned it had a similar toned down brightness where even the brighter parts of the movie in the middle of the day, there's still like a weird filter.
Like, it made it feel dark, but at the same time, like, you could see what's going on.
Yeah, and so Salem's Lot went more in that direction of they were able to balance that with just the red and blue scale, and it worked in multiple ways. So if you watch this movie, you'll see exactly you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Now, I do want to make a point on that, or extend that, I guess. Another thing that they did to kind of help with lighting that I really, really appreciated, you'll notice that, like, the crosses start glowing and shit.
Yeah,
like
it's
around
like a
vampires.
torch.
Kind of like a sting effect from Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
But, so in the, like, that helps with the lighting so you can see in the dark scenes, and that's dope. But one thing I really like about that is in the book, Callahan, like blesses the holy water. And is it Ben that dips his hands in it? His fists in it? But like, yeah, homie straight dips his fist in holy water, and like they have a glowing aura around them. So it reminded me of that.
I mean, and
so it's fitting.
They also lean heavily into the Mark's appreciation of comic book, and that's where a lot of it, like all of his information,
Oh, dude, his
comes from
research,
studying
the
comic
research
books.
scene is gold, man. When you just
Because
see, you got
Mark is-
Mark just going through comics and shit, and then it just cuts to Matt,
He's
just
got
like
these big
old
tomes.
school.
And,
Yeah.
so I like how they leaned into that because that's really where that trope of the glowing cross fighting off vampires comes from.
Yeah.
Is the comics, specifically the comic version of Dracula. But that's one complaint. Speaking of the cotton candy sky scene, the complaint that we had was that Straker took Ralphie instead of Barlow being there.
So one thing, there are several small changes throughout, and a lot of them we appreciated. Some of them not as much. That's one not as much. I
would
do
like to see
appreciate
Barlow
it as a whole that they made these changes because it keeps it kind of fresh. Like, I know this story so well that if they'd have just done everything exactly the same, I would have loved it, but it's not as fun. So
Wouldn't have been as effective.
exactly,
And I mean, even with that scene, I like that
it was goofy though.
they. I mean, we did mention that Straker is goofy, and he is kind of goofy in the book,
Alright.
so they kept that.
All right, dude looks kind of like Paul F. Tompkins, and like
You did mention that.
I said that right from the jump, and then as we're watching the movie, I'm like, I'm a little salty now that they didn't cast him to play him because how goofy the dude is, like right up his alley.
But you know, no offense to the actual character or the actor who actually played him.
Oh yeah, you did a great
He
job.
did a good job. But mentioning that scene is like I appreciate how they did it because they allowed the more toned down reveal of Barlow through the bag. I really like how they did that scene.
Just
That
a
was pretty
quick
cool.
glimpse of his face. Real quick.
And then we wanted to mention Danny's scene in the hospital where he said he was thirsty. His mom runs off to find him a glass of water. She comes back and he has ripped his blood thing off of the little dangly hook and just ripped into it and there's blood all over him. And,
Yeah,
the next scene is literally his funeral,
Like,
so it works.
In the book, he does die in the hospital, but like he just dies.
Yeah,
He complains about being thirsty nonstop, but he just dies. Like he doesn't rip into the blood bag, so that
That made it just more impactful. They wanted a blood scene, probably. But I like that because they immediately cut to the funeral, and Callahan. This is not our first introduction to him in this movie, but it's the first one where we actually interact with him as an audience. And he's of course drinking because he's an alcoholic Catholic priest. He offers Mike Ryerson some of it because he's the grave digger. And yeah, like that helps build his character. Earlier on, we see Susan and Ben at the drive-thru, which comes as a much bigger part in this movie than it is in the book.
So the drive-through, actually, I'm glad you bring it up, is kind of back to our point earlier about the rushing things. that was another scene that they used to fill you in a lot of the little details of the town. Like, they probably knocked out like 4 chapters worth of just meeting the town in what, a 2-minute scene of her sitting there being like, this is such and such, this is such and such. Like,
and it's realistic, and that's one of the things I mentioned multiple times about this movie is that it's the character interactions are very realistic. Like, they'll stutter, like you would be trying to say something, but you get a catch in your throat because it's a tense moment, so you have to kind of...
Dr. Cody's real as fuck, man.
So Dr. Cody is one of the changes, and a lot of people will complain is, identity, fucking politics bullshit thing just to make this white male doctor a female black lady, obviously as opposed to any other kind of lady. But my point being that she was perfect, like you mentioned during the movie, is that she got the same vibe.
Exactly. So the characters changed, but the vibe you get from that character, which is the most important thing from that character in the book, is exactly the same. It's a character joining the crew late,
Skeptical.
very skeptical, is the most relatable as far as their reaction to all this shit.
Fuck this shit.
Yeah, and she ran with that. Like, yeah. She's skeptical about it being a vampire, and when the bitch like lifts up, that's oh fuck this shit, and immediately grabs she grabs a jar of popsicle sticks to make it cross.
Yeah, that was her first thought. Which is, so the funeral scene we wanted to mention. Your favorite thing is the transition between Father Callahan about to start his sermon and Mike Ryerson having his lunch, waiting to fill in the grave once the funeral's over.
There's a couple good transitions in this, but the transition we're talking about here is he literally opens up the book, and then it cuts to peanut butter and jelly sandwich being opened up by Mike Ryerson. And
the transition is so smooth. Like, I was confused for a second. Like, what the fuck just happened?
Both of us were kind of wrong. Our first thought, well, not kind of. We were both wrong on our first thoughts on what happened, and we were close to thinking the same but different. So we both knew. Oh, he's a drunk. We think he's hallucinating. Aaron thinks he's hallucinating and brought a sandwich instead of the Bible. And I'm thinking the opposite. I thought this man's hallucinating, opens up his Bible and just is thinking he's holding a sandwich now.
I don't know which one's more ridiculous.
I don't know which one's worse.
But that was one thing we wanted to definitely mention that.
We were wrong.
I will say in that scene, when Danny comes out the grave, I right then decided that these are some good-looking vampires. I like the aesthetic. The glowing eyes. They don't immediately turn to like a monster like some vampire movies do. And it's more like that he is just a human that can do some wild ass shit. And we spoke of the lighting earlier, and there's a lot of good scenes in this of vampires, in the misty fog and like standing against lighting.
There's some good
rooftops and stuff. It's a really beautiful movie.
The treehouse.
The treehouse scene was pretty
cool.
dope. And so, like, specifics as far as likes and dislikes. Particular in the likes, I have to say that they stuck pretty solid to the story. Like,
they did. You brought this up. There was a scene early on that was basically word for word.
Yeah, one of the first opening scenes. It was pretty much.
Yeah, one of the first interactions in the movie just is a scene from the book. They also, another like of mine, the sheriff.
Yeah, Parkins Gillespie is good.
People shit on him because he in the book he
runs away.
Yeah. He knows he's one of the smartest people. He catches on that it's vampires, and he's just like, yeah, time to move. I gotta get the fuck out of here.
He's been there for 30 years, and like that was mine. But like, you give 30 years to this town. Like, why do I need to give my life for these vampires? Like, let's just go.
here's my thing. Everyone shits on him because this is a story. This is a book or a movie, depending on which one you're
supposed to be a hero.
Exactly. If it's real life, do you really think everyone's going to be like, yeah, let's step up and kill these vampires? Hell no, bro. You mean I can get in my car and fucking leave?
Yeah.
Bye.
So,
but I don't like. I do like that they really stuck with him. I don't like that his body just fucking drops in towards the end. And it's like, oh, my man didn't even make it out.
Yeah, he was supposed to be one of the ones that escaped, but like they show him dead later on. Speaking of which,
Okay,
we mentioned in our
this is the biggest dislike.
actual book review of Salem's Lot that this book is very much connected to Stephen King's broader multiverse, including the Dark Tower series. The main reason that that is the case is the character we mentioned earlier, Father Callahan. They did a good job of presenting him as a alcoholic but goodly priest. We mentioned that they weren't really explicit about him having lost his faith until later
They
on.
weren't until his scene with Barlow, his encounter with Barlow, when Barlow brings it up, and then
Now you know.
it's just kind of out of nowhere. I mean, it's really not just because of the
You
vibes
can kind
it
of tell
gives,
the way he was.
but
No.
it's a big thing in the book,
Yeah.
and in the other ones, yeah. So,
But that being the case, the scene that he has with Barlow. Hold on for 1 second because we forgot something. Before we get to that, let's deal with Matt. Matt and Mark have always been my favorite characters. I believe we mentioned that in the previous coverage of this book. But Mark is another character they changed the race of, which doesn't bother me at all, but I'm sure someone will bitch and complain. But they once again kept the spirit of Mark, because Mark Petrie is a little badass.
Mark Petrie's the shit, dude.
So
He straight murders people.
yeah, he's the only actual murderer, as obviously the vampires are killing, but they're just turning their victims into more vampires.
No, he'll slaughter the familiars. He don't give a
So
fuck,
yeah,
bro.
so Straker is the master vampire. Barlow's a human familiar. He's basically is a servant. He's the one that set up this whole scenario of him moving into this town and start slaughtering kids and adults and everybody else. There's a scene where Mark has decided that the little 11-year-old boy that he is,
11 and 4 quarters.
11 and 3 quarters.
He said 4 quarters because he's 12 in the book.
Okay, well,
Yeah, he's a little smart ass.
either way, he decides he's got to kill Barlow. No one else really knows about it. We've been over this in the podcast. But the scene is he shows up at the Marsden house, going to kill the master vampire, has a run-in with Straker. In this case, we get Matt there instead.
Yeah, so he's supposed to run into Susan.
He's supposed to run into Susan.
I'm
then
glad they
Straker.
didn't do that because Susan,
They let her stay on the team a little longer.
yeah, and she's so much better than she is in the book, but she's still Susan at the end of the day, and like
She's a plot
you can
device.
take her or leave her, man. To be honest, so like
She's always been a plot device specifically meant to give Ben something to do to make his character matter.
and
In the end,
Matt's always been one of my favorite characters, so like
Matt showing up, that was dope.
yeah,
I was
I'm
curious
glad-
as to where they
I'm
were
glad
going.
They swapped it to Matt.
So Matt does, instead of dying quietly off page in the
With a heart attack.
hospital,
Yeah.
a heart attack,
Bullshit.
not even really involved in the stuff. Like, no, they give him a scene of action.
Yeah.
Which I'm
So
down with.
him and Mark going to the Martian house and
Take this motherfucker out.
yeah, like that's the plan. And then
Doesn't work out.
no, dude, they're going up. He tells Mark to go up these stairs.
So they come to this staircase where the stairs aren't there. It's just a risen floor to this door. He boosts them up to the boosts him up to the door, and then shit goes terribly wrong.
But it's a cool scene because he's just like, yo, turn the light on. And then it's just like, vampire crushes the light bulb. And like,
Yeah, that was
it's sick.
That was actually the first real reveal of Barlow. Like, you've seen him little tiny bits through the bag and here and there, but this was the first, like, look, there's a fucking vampire.
So that is, before we get back to Callahan,
Yeah.
that's the good change with Matt. There's one change I didn't care for with Matt, and it kind of relates to the rushing thing. So in the book, Ben comes back, and when he runs into Matt, Matt's a former teacher of his.
Yeah.
And he remembers Ben. They remember each other. They're kind of friends now. They become friends.
But
In this,
movie, they're new
because
friends.
there's a couple a couple time skips there, because they're looking for Ralphie, and then
Yeah, all of them.
there's a couple little skips. It allows you to accept
Infer.
it as
You infer that
that
they have a
time
longer
they become
relationship.
friends, but
He just randomly gets a call from Matt, and it kind of feels off like, why would Matt ask Ben, someone he just met? If you're just going from the perspective of the movie, like
20 minutes ago he
yeah.
shook his hand and introduced himself.
Yeah, and now he's calling him to come to his house because he believes there's a vampire in his house. Obviously, this is one criticism I want to make, and it doesn't really matter. But Susan keeps appearing in places without any kind of previous mention. No one called her to Matt's house. She was just there with him. No one called her to the.
You're right.
No.
Did he just go pick her up or something?
guess.
Dude, he is really like that hard up for that pussy.
And there's a couple other times where that happens where it's just like, wow.
Yeah, okay. She just pops in. I guess they were just like, she needs
She needs to be in the
relevant.
scene, so here you go. But like I said, that's neither here nor there. The problem that I have leads to the scene we were just mentioning with Barlow and Father Callahan in the kitchen. Basically, the whole town's dying. An hour in Mark's kitchen, Mark and Father Callahan trying to explain to Mark's parents, like, look, there's vampires, people dead. We've both seen this. Y'all need to leave. We need to go. We need to get out of here. And very stubbornly, the father ignores them, decides to go answer a knock at the door.
He's a father in a horror movie. He did his job.
That's fair. But I think even the most rational, skeptical motherfucker, if an adult, especially an adult priest that's highly respected in town, is obviously is an alcoholic, but they're backing up your son's word here.
And not just your son. Like, let's be honest. If I came home as a child and said some shit like that, and a drunk priest was like, yeah, I seen it, my parents might react the same. But if Jessica did, they'd be like, hold up. She ain't gonna lie to us like that.
So, I mean, I don't know. It just frustrated me that they weren't
Mark's
even...
a Jessica. He's not, like, his parents know that kid's not gonna just tell them some stupid, crazy
But they didn't
bullshit.
believe him, so they didn't believe him or the priest. They ignored him, so they clearly believed he would tell them some
I
crazy
know, but
bullshit.
that's what's crazy, because watch the other versions, read the book, and
I'm saying
they don't think that from him.
Yeah, I mean, even in the book, they are more accepting because back to the town dying thing of they were more accepting at that point because half the town had basically disappeared.
That's true. They did it was kind of a couple little details here and there, and just like it's like the extras. It felt like the extras that they had hired throughout. They just slowly were getting rid of them through the movie.
Something like that.
And so you just don't even really notice it until they're gone, and then you're like, oh shit, no, people have been just missing.
But yeah, so the problem with this scene is they kill Father Callahan, which is not supposed to happen. There's a very important scene between him and Barlow, where Barlow makes Father Callahan drink his blood, which gives gives Father Callahan a curse, solidifying his ostracization, if that's how you pronounce that word, out of the church. There's a scene where he tries to go back into his church, and it, like, you know, throws him off, basically.
He can't. Like,
Yeah.
it's holy ground. He can't go there.
And so, like, all of that's removed, which, as previously mentioned, leads directly into King's Multiverse and the Dark Tower series. And so, it doesn't really matter to this story, but as a Stephen King fan, it was the wrong decision to do that.
I agree 100%. Like, that's a problem. However, as a Stephen King fan, as a Dark Tower fan, what's the biggest fucking saying? There are other worlds in these. So I will take
just a variation.
Yeah, I will take this as I do any other variation that I don't like of something.
Different world.
This isn't the real one. This is the version. This is another world that Callahan got killed by Barlow instead of making it to meet Roland.
So we mentioned that there was some extensions, and now we're getting towards the end of the movie. This is where the strongest deviation of the movie occurs. We mentioned that in the book, there's like a whole little thing where they're like going through town just getting rid of vampires.
Slaughtering.
Basically, mainly looking for Barlow or heading towards looking for Barlow. And they find Barlow in his coffin, they open it up, there's like a scene where he's like, nah, but it's pretty much that's it. Because the big climactic scene is supposed to be specifically Susan's staking. Like that was the actual...
Because that's the most...
Yes, the emotional crux of the whole thing. All of that, fucking no, out the window. What they did instead, which I enjoyed, I like. I mean, this is not a criticism. It's just different. They went back to the movie.
They let Mark be a badass.
They let Mark be more of a badass. They let Ben be a badass. Really, he was much more badass in this movie than he ever thought about being.
Oh,
in the book.
dude, yeah, this was they did Ben like they made him better.
And so I don't want to completely spoil everything, so we're going to stop there with the specifics. But what I will say is some of our questions at the beginning of the movie. We questioned their decisions with the not showing how much the town is dying off. So
They made up for that.
They made up for it, but it still did have an effect on the end where, because when they go to Matt's house after they're looking for Matt and they don't know that he's gone,
Yeah.
there's vampires on the roof, and that's literally all he says is there's vampires on the roof. And that's really the first we get of like, oh, everyone's dead now. There's just vampires roaming freely at this point. Because up to that point, there was nothing like that.
No,
So there's very much all of the sudden portion of this movie where shit just starts happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like once it starts.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit.
And that's not necessarily a criticism, it's just an observation that, like, if you watch this, there's gonna be a moment in this movie where shit just ramps the fuck up.
Dude, it's alright. I feel like honestly they did it justice because every single version of this story, once the word vampires is thrown out, shit gets crazy.
Jimmy throws this shit out real
Because
fuck.
it is a slow burn up until they say they'll even say creature of the night.
He did say creature.
And then it's still a slow burn. As soon as the word vampires is thrown out, shit gets real bad.
That was funny as Matt's whole little fucking vampires.
That was hilarious, dude.
But so that's most of what we have to say about the movie. Other than y'all should definitely check it out.
I do like that when I read the book, Matt and Dr. Cody are my favorite characters. And when I watch this version, Matt and Dr. Cody are still my favorite characters. Like, I love
I've always
Mark.
loved
I
Mark.
love Mark. He's still like, this is my favorite version of Mark. I'm going to be honest. Dude's a badass.
This is bad.
Like, He's a killer, bro.
Because he's just straightforward, like, this is what I got to do. Why y'all in my way?
So, kill vampires.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I like when
y'all
he just
killing
walks in the
vampires.
church, it's
I'm
like, I
killing
came here to
them.
get supplies. Y'all go. Y'all
Really, he
go.
killed more humans than vampires.
Yeah, he did. So that was another major change we didn't mention yet. But,
Oh, yeah, there was a second familiar.
Susan's mom, instead of just disappearing from the story altogether, pretty much after Susan turned into a vampire, like, don't know and give a shit about her family.
I mean,
anymore.
she was a bitch anyway, so no one
Yeah,
really
like,
liked
she
her
was
anyway.
always an unlikable character. She's meant to be.
She's worse.
But to make her one of the main villains of this movie to the point where she's, like, actively murdered by a 11 and 4/4-year-old child, yeah. I appreciate that change. I do wish they did more with Straker as how ominous and upfront he was at the beginning of, like, the first half of this movie.
Yeah.
And then just to be done with him.
Yeah.
That was a little disappointing, because Straker is an interesting character in the book, especially.
Yeah, and I like the change up of it feeling like Paul Tompkins, but like,
Still prefer the.
I do prefer the older one, the older
Kiefer
Straker.
Sutherland.
Yeah, but here's my
Kiefer
thing
Sutherland
is,
Donald
yes,
Sutherland.
yeah, well, I mean, they're the same person. They're just,
One has a beard, yeah.
I'm my dad, it happens. But when you read Salem's Lot, it may help that I read Needful Things right after I read Salem's Lot last time I read it, but you get the same vibe.
Yeah.
That shop owner,
And
like,
Things really is like the spiritual sequel to
Yeah.
Salem's Lot in a lot of ways.
so I really enjoyed that character. I really enjoyed reading that character. He's
very
very
neat things
interesting.
movie. Christopher Plummer
So-
did such a fucking good job.
Yeah, he did.
But that's a different movie. We're here talking about Salem's Lot.
But I love that. I love reading with him. So I wanted that. So it's a bittersweet.
Little give
It's a
and take
bittersweet
there,
for me
yeah.
because while I didn't get that,
Straker's
what I
awesome.
got instead was fucking great. Like, it's not. There's going to be a lot of people that don't like it,
I
and
will
a lot of
say-
people that do. I'm one of them that do.
As much as I like the Nosferatu look of the original 70, whatever the fuck version, and the more toned down look of the, was it like 2002 or whenever that came out?
Something like that.
This one is,
Barlow.
I really, really like this Barlow. He looks good. Like, he's aesthetically
It's kind of a. It's
a
a
cross
very,
between the Nosferatu
it's very,
version.
It's very much the Nosferatu, but
I Am Legend.
yeah, like
They cross
more
those.
mutiny.
Yeah, they kind of cross those two styles, which does fit because it's supposed to be like the whole EC horror comics, Tales from the Crypt
Yeah.
style vampire that fucking Mark Petrie is reading in the movie. So they did. That was very fitting. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. We'll probably come
Yeah.
back to Salem's Lot some more at some point.
We know we spoiled a lot. We do it in all our videos. Y'all should be used to that. But we're
I'll leave the
posting.
spoilers with them.
Plus, we're posting this tomorrow, so y'all have literally a day to watch it. Like,
You don't know that until you've seen
yeah,
this.
but still, like, it should get.
But so, hopefully, I know we've been like, let's hit up some news real quick while we're sitting here.
Oh yeah,
talking
dude, we
to-
have not put out shit in a minute.
As you can see, we're in a. You've
Everyone's
never
moved.
seen us before, so hi.
Hello.
This is the first visual of us you really get. Yeah, we've been moving into this new house.
Life's been busy.
Yeah, we've had all sorts of different things happen. I got 2 poetry books out now instead of just the one, so go check those out. I'll put some links down somewhere in the comments, I'm sure. And also, I'm about to have them on Audible, so if you like audiobooks as opposed to the printed material, then you can get it that way very soon. And I don't know if you just saw the dog walk by, but there you go. Other than that, I believe that's it. You got anything else? Other than we're going to start back on this shortly.
No.
Alright. So that's our Salem's Lot review. You'll hear more from us shortly. Check out the blog. Check out the other videos on this page. Check out this movie.
Check out the book if you haven't read it.
Yeah, fuck the movie, read the book. That's better.
We literally, it's been a year.
Read it. Yeah.
What the fuck are y'all doing? Till then, keep it strange.